What if the ceiling on your income isn't the economy? It isn't your job. It isn't your education. It isn't even your boss. What if the ceiling is inside your own mind, and it was placed there so quietly, so carefully, that you never once questioned it? Here's the terrifying truth. Most people will never earn beyond a certain number. Not because they can't, but because a part of them genuinely believes they shouldn't. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear might be the most uncomfortable thing you have listened to all year. There's a thought pattern so common, so deeply embedded in how we see ourselves, that most people carry it their entire lives without ever giving it a name. Psychologists call it identity-based limitation. But in the real world, it sounds like this: I'm not really a money person. People like me don't end up wealthy. That kind of success is for a different type of person. Let me tell you about a man named Daniel. Daniel grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Manchester. Smart kid, hardworking, everyone around him said the same thing: he had potential. But Daniel also grew up watching his father come home tired every single night, and hearing the same phrase repeated at the dinner table: "We are not rich people, Danny, but we are honest. And honest is enough." Now that sentiment is beautiful. It comes from love. It comes from dignity. But Daniel absorbed something else entirely. He absorbed the idea that wealth and honesty were opposites, that choosing one meant betraying the other. So every time Daniel got close to a financial breakthrough, a promotion, a business idea, a raise he could have asked for, something in him pulled back. Not from fear of failure, from fear of becoming someone he wasn't supposed to be. This is what identity-based limitation does. It doesn't stop you from dreaming. It stops you just before you act. The human brain is wired to protect your self-concept above almost everything else. It is more committed to keeping you consistent with who you think you are than it is to helping you grow. And when your identity says, "I am not a wealthy person," your behavior will follow that script without question. The first step to breaking this pattern isn't learning more skills. It isn't reading more books. It is sitting with a single brutally honest question. Who told you that you weren't the kind of person who could have more money? And why did you believe them? Here is something that most financial content will never tell you. Scarcity is not just a financial condition. It is a psychological state. And the cruelest thing about it is this: once your brain enters a scarcity mindset, it actually begins making decisions that guarantee you stay scarce. Think about that. The very state that needs the most clarity, the most patience, the most long-term thinking, produces a brain that is anxious, reactive, and obsessed with immediate survival. Researchers at Princeton and Harvard conducted a study that revealed something startling. When people felt financially pressured, their cognitive bandwidth, the mental space available for decision-making, dropped significantly. Their ability to think ahead narrowed. They began to tunneling. It's the term researchers use to describe what happens when the mind locks onto one urgent thing so hard that everything outside that tunnel disappears. Let me give you a story that might sound familiar. A woman named Priya was a graphic designer in her late 20s, living in London. She wasn't broke by any conventional definition, but she felt broke permanently, chronically. Every month felt like a race she was always half a step behind on. And so Priya made decisions from that feeling. She never negotiated her rates with clients because she was terrified of losing them. She accepted every underpaying project because something is better than nothing. She turned down a 3-month mentorship opportunity because it required reducing her client load temporarily, and that felt like a cliff she couldn't step off. Priya wasn't failing because of her talent. She was failing because her nervous system had decided that shrinking was the same as safety. And that is the scarcity loop. The mind says, take the certain small thing now, because the uncertain big thing might not come. And so the big thing never comes. And the mind says, see, I told you. The loop confirms itself, over and over. Breaking the scarcity loop isn't about positive thinking. It is about recognizing the loop while you are inside it. It is about learning to pause before a decision and asking, am I choosing this from clarity or from fear? Because fear will always choose small. And clarity, even quiet, uncertain clarity, will choose forward. Every single time you choose comfort over growth, there is a price. It doesn't show up on a bank statement. It doesn't arrive as a bill, but it accumulates, quietly, over years, until one day you look up and realize that the life you are living is not the one you imagined, and the distance between the two is made entirely of avoided discomfort. This is what I call the comfort tax. And it is the most expensive fee most people will ever pay. Consider the documented story of Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, who built one of the most recognized brands in the world, essentially from her apartment, with no business background, no investors, and no industry connections. What most people don't know about Sarah is not the success story. It's the thought pattern before the success story. Sarah has spoken openly about how she was conditioned, like most of us, to avoid failure, to avoid looking foolish, to stay within the lines of what seemed reasonable. She worked as a door-to-door fax machine salesperson for years. She was good at it. It was stable. It was comfortable. And the idea for Spanx lived in her head quietly, almost embarrassed of itself. But here's what Sarah did differently. She had a father who en Sabotage of Trihut Naim, this is remarkable, used to ask her at dinner every week, what did you fail at this week? And if she had no answer, he'd be disappointed. He was rewiring her relationship with discomfort. He was making failure feel like evidence of effort, not evidence of inadequacy. Most of us had the opposite experience. We were praised for being correct. We were rewarded for being safe. And so our brains built a fortress around comfort and called that fortress being responsible. But responsibility without risk tolerance doesn't build wealth. It preserves just enough to feel okay, while the gap between okay and extraordinary quietly grows wider. The comfort tax shows up in the job you didn't leave, the conversation you didn't have, the idea you didn't pursue because someone might have laughed. Every one of those moments had a cost, and the tax was your potential. Here is the truth that ties all of this together, and I want you to hear this very clearly. Inside every person there is what behavioral scientists call an income thermostat. It is not a number your bank sets. It is not a number the market sets. It is a number your psychology sets, based on everything you have ever been told, felt, believed, and survived. And just like a thermostat in a room, the moment the temperature rises above what's been set, something kicks in and cools it back down. You get a windfall and you spend it almost unconsciously, until you are back where you started. You land a high-paying contract, and somehow the expenses expand to match. You begin to grow, and you self-sabotage in ways you don't even notice until afterward. This isn't weakness. This isn't stupidity. This is your mind doing exactly what it was trained to do, keeping you within the range it recognizes as you. The wealthy don't just have better strategies, they have different thermostats, set higher, not by accident, but because somewhere along the way, either through environment, mentorship, failure, or sheer stubborn defiance, they expanded what they believed they were allowed to have. The greatest financial work you will ever do is not in a spreadsheet. It is not in a portfolio. It is in the quiet, uncomfortable, deeply personal process of raising your own thermostat, one belief at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of choosing forward over familiar at a time. Your income is a reflection of your self-concept. Change the concept and the income follows. I want to leave you with something simple, because the most powerful truths usually are, nobody is coming to give you permission. No one is going to arrive one morning and say, all right, you have waited long enough. You have been humble enough, careful enough, patient enough. Today is the day you are allowed to want more. That moment doesn't come from the outside. It never has. It never will. The people who changed their financial lives, the ones who broke the patterns, rewired the loops, raised the thermostat, they all did one thing in common. They stopped waiting. They stopped waiting to feel ready. They stopped waiting for proof that they deserved more. They stopped waiting for the world to notice them before they noticed themselves. They sat with all the doubt, all the fear, all the inherited beliefs about who they were, and they chose very deliberately to author a different story. You are not your parents' financial story. You are not your neighborhood ceiling. You are not the number that made you feel small at 22. You are a collection of choices, and choices can always be made differently. The thought patterns that have been limiting your income are not life sentences. They are habits, and habits, with enough awareness and enough courage, can be broken. Start today. Not with a dramatic gesture, not with a grand plan. Start with the quietest, most powerful revolution there is.